Okay, so I started thinking about concepts more and more, and okay, I realized that the genetic code of the process throughout evolution for like blah 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 how many years, like essentially made an issue. And at some point I realized that like language destroyed everything. Like, hear me out. The reason why we have all these concepts is this unjustified sense of awareness that never should have came to be. Now, okay, when I'm talking about language, I know I'm specifically talking about like spoken language. I know you can say that there are things like body language, whatever, just like different ways of like communication. But like, okay, we as human beings have evolved to express ourselves through the use of words, and that's where we get concepts. That's where we get like ideologies. But here's the thing though, did we ever actually have to need to know these things? Concepts are essentially what brought about like the existential crisis in humans, brought about our awareness of, let's say, tribalism and this and that. And I know everyone can keep talking about how like animals will fight, animals have their like way of like wanting to have things in like a certain way, but like, okay, we're all still animals. We're just animals with an unnecessary need to like understand, and like that's the issue. Language should have never been a thing. Language is what destroyed everything. Because, think about this like even more. Like, we are just pure creatures of like, I don't know, let's say our instincts are this, are that. But then language gets in the way because language gives you the ability to think and like discover things. But if you were an animal back then, it was as simple as, okay, if you're dead, then you're dead, and then like that's it, and the rest of the animals just go about like doing their thing. And yeah, animals can have like care, compassion, and like empathy and like all that kind of stuff too. But they don't even have the full extent to go about it the way we do. Whereas, for example, we can discuss things like moral philosophy and how things are, established to be right and wrong. Like, what are like the proper consequences? Like with animals, it's as straightforward as, okay, protect, kill, protect, like whatever. Here we are discussing how should a human being be punished or like be given consequences for things that like we perceive are wrong. How much jail time? Should they get the death penalty? Should the death penalty even be okay? Blah blah blah. This and this and that. Like, oh, no death penalty. They should just rot in a cell for like the rest of their lives because they deserve that suffering. Death is too easy. Yada yada yada. But no, animals never needed that. Other lesser animals that weren't aware of human concepts, because yes, human concepts are specifically just that, human concepts. We never needed them. Because here's the thing, we knew things without even being able to like conceptualize them. Like when you see a baby, it knows when it's happy, it knows when it's like sad, even if it can't explain itself to like the fullest capacity to like, let's say, we as older human beings are capable of doing. But like that's when we form language. That's when we have to assess and see everything in terms of like what we believe. Atheist, non-atheist, liberal, conservative, whatever, like all of these things. And then we get like all these like human concepts because, oh, we insist that we have to be civilized people and there's a due process, whatever, all these kind of things in terms of like how we treat each other. But no, you don't see animals dealing with this. You wouldn't think that a dog perhaps has like an existential crisis, but like where it all shattered the way of going about is when language came about. And that's where we found out about like human concepts and like these ideas and the fact that like we can just argue. For the animals, it's as straightforward as, okay, if I kill you, for example, I get the territory or I get to feast on your flesh, blah blah blah, this and this and that. We still do those things, but we include concepts to everything. If there are survivors, if there are, I don't know, yeah, because we have like our ability to like discuss. But no, this is why we're always divided, because just like animals, it is simple as, okay, who maintains the power? Who gets to have that? Who gets to, let's say, like enforce something? It's as straightforward as like when you're like an animal, but no, humans, because with like an unnecessary need from like evolution, have been given this like, I guess, sense of like awareness that in a way still feels like a sham and a fraud. Like look up stuff about like determinism, because I don't really want to expand too much about that, because I'm trying to focus on this idea that like, okay, it was language that truly destroyed everything, because the world worked in emotion. And even though we have the concept, like let's say determinism, to explain that we don't really need to be, doing like a certain thing, that's still part of the act. That's still part of like the script. And we should just die and live, die. It's been like that for like centuries. Like animals doing things, they just die and live, die and live. We go about what is the right way to live, what is the correct way to live, what is who's deserving of life, who's not deserving of life, murder, non-murder, whatever, like all these kind of things. These concepts that never actually needed to come into play like whatsoever. Like they're labels. That's all simply that they are labels. But because we as humans think that like, okay, what we experience for some reason has to be important because that is the curse brought upon us within this sense of like evolution, it gives us this like brick wall. It gives us this like brick wall. Because even though like I can say these things, how am I supposed to unprogram all these things that like I've, learned to speak through the socialization of like languages and how I process things due to said language? I don't even know how to do that. Because obviously I'm also using language right now to like try to explain, yes, this concept that like language was never actually necessary. Because much like how we look at other animals as like lower and like less than a human, all it would have been fine for the universe to keep going is if simply like theoretically, imagine this, is that like we didn't need to know why we know, or even simply the fact that like even though we as humans don't know anything, it would have in a way benefited us, because I guess you can just say ignorance is bliss, for example, that we shouldn't have had to know how much we know or don't even know that we don't know. Yeah, because like why would a dog ever have this thought in his brain? A dog doesn't even have the thought to be, oh, ignorance is bliss. We can conceptualize that ignorance is bliss. And obviously other animals still have like, wants, desires, this and that, but it's like, they're going through the code. We have code that insists that we can see further beyond the code. As in, you can even say ego death, you can say philosophy, religion, like, okay, we expect that we can transcend, because even though we can't transcend, we've been, let's say, wired to think that we can transcend. That's why a lot of religious people exist. That's why we have this concept of smart and dumb, whereas kind of like what I said before with animals, like, okay, it's just who lives, who dies, who cares, nothing more, nothing less, and the universe is indifferent. Life will be indifferent towards how humans are doing things. But no, we insist that like there's something more. Animals, when they die, how as cold we are to those animals dying, okay, excluding pets, let's say, like for the animals that we eat, the animals that like we don't actually care about, that's technically how the universe looks at us. And if we were like those animals, we never would have had to been aware of it. Of course, at some point, understanding that all we have are human concepts and conceptualization, nihilism was bound to come to place sooner in like one way or another. And does it give you a higher epiphany? No, it still doesn't, because all you are given is nothing. But most people, essentially the people that I guess like this is a more accurate definition of like NPC, because we're all most NPCs, most of us are just average, but like no, we should have been non-playable entities because we never were. And even if we can realize that we never were, it doesn't change the fact that we never were supposed to actually be something. We're just machines. We're just atoms working out and about. So like again, yes, nihilism was at some point destined to be there. Destined, and I'm putting that word in like such severe amount of quotation right now, to like, eradicate all these things, because they're just concepts. Language is a concept. We use language to conceptualize. That's how the process of thinking and understanding like ruined everything, because it's all against the NPC mechanism that the universe is actually supposed to operate on. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but if someone out there gets it, then like you get it. But if you weren't, okay, that's also still part of the script. So like, it's fine. It's fine. The made up script.